Thank you so much, and such an honour and a privilege to be able to be here and share a few thoughts on Islamophobia. I mean, the biggest challenge I'm faced with is Islamophobia in 10 minutes. Where do we begin? And what I won't do is bore you with definitions of what it is, what it isn't, of some of the kind of complex conversation that is taking place within the lived experience of Muslims and the communities amongst which we live, or the kind of academic and professional definitions that universities and governments are trying to tease out some of the nuance and the challenge that is faced both by Muslims but also by the non-Muslims that we encounter. What I'm hoping to do is share with you a couple of experiences that might just give you some insights into what it's like living with the reality of the kind of media perception and also the misinformation regarding Islam as a religion, and also what that means about us as Muslims kind of living day to day. But before we do that, I'd love to just kind of share with you a very quick slide with some facts on Islamophobia and hate crime within the UK. As we can see, these or the data that's presented on this slide here is actually a few years old. And what we're kind of hearing is that the figures are even worse now. And part of that is because of reporting, so that has increased, but also there is an increased awareness that if nothing is said, nothing will be done. And I could dwell on what I kind of perceive as being the really kind of horrific and problematic situation that you can see here. But what's also really interesting is how Islamophobia is perceived. And is Islam and Muslims as a community, is it a race? Is it a religion? There's so many kind of different questions that come up. For me, what's fascinating about that is the conversation that is then taking place. And we can see here, Wes Streeting is a politician within the UK. And here he's arguing that Islamophobia is a type of racism. And that's helpful because it then means that these crimes that are taking place that are demonstrated by this slide here can then be responded to and recorded in some way. And just as a kind of very brief side note, if you're looking for somewhere to read and explore the notion of Islam and Muslims as a kind of being racialized, then there's this fantastic book here by Professor Zaha Aziz in the United States. And it's really good because it teases out some of the challenges that Muslims face in terms of not really having a space where we can take some of the challenges that we face. And what I'd love to do with the time that I have left is just kind of share with you a day in the life of Sayyyidah and what that means in terms of my lived experience. So here I am welcoming you into my home. My office is in the loft, and I have to even be very conscious about the space within my home now and how I'm presenting in front of you. Because if I don't come across as being reasonable or as being fair, or if I use certain words, then chances are it won't be Sayyyidah that is judged on that. It will be Islam that is judged on that. And that in itself is quite interesting, because how are we then thinking about the people that we perceive in the streets as we encounter people of different faiths? even as I encounter other Muslims, what are the stereotypes that are very, very slowly kind of seeping their way into my mind because of the messaging that's being sent out in the media and in social media and the conversations that are taking place. And so one of the things that I'm very conscious of as I leave the house to kind of go out into the world is, am I smiling? Am I wearing too much black? What does my hijab look tidy? How are people going to perceive me? Am I in a good mood? And these kind of questions that play in my mind, and if I leave the home walking along and someone sees me, are they thinking of me as just another random person in the street? Or do they see me as a Muslim representing not just me, but an entire faith? And how is that then perceived? So if I do something that is a mistake because I'm a human being, is that mistake being judged on me, or is it being the whole faith that's judged? And I think as people of religion, as we're kind of trying to really lean into how we are as Muslims, as Christians, as people of a range of faiths, then it's a real challenge to think about how we represent our religion and the responsibility that is placed upon us as that is happening. An example of this that I will share very briefly is I was presenting a keynote at a conference just a few months ago, and the topic that I was presenting on was embodiment and autoethnography. But it felt as if there was a requirement for me, or an expectation for me, to really go into my reflexivity before I could even start speaking about the subject matter. What's that got to do with Islamophobia? Because as a British brown Muslim woman, there's an expectation that I will show up in a particular way. People already are making assessments and judgments about what the Muslim in the space is going to think or say or contribute. And without that piece of really kind of making others feel comfortable and be ready to receive the information, it makes it much more challenging to then show up as the complete whole me. And I'm speaking about my experience, but I know and can imagine that it's like that for the 1.7 billion Muslims that exist all over the world. And I would offer that in terms of overcoming Islamophobia, one of the things that we can do is we can have conversations. And speaking with people and engaging with individuals who are different from us is one of the most powerful ways that we can not only understand other people, but we can also create belonging for them. And for me, I just want to leave you with an invitation that if you see somebody that is Muslim and you haven't had a deep conversation with them or with a Muslim before, engage with them, because I suspect if they're anything like me, they are as curious about your faith as I am. And through that mutuality, it becomes much easier to live as a minority in what is essentially a Christian country like I'm living in Britain today. And I'll pause there for now. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace, mercy, and blessings from Allah be upon all of you. Well, I'm Fernando. I'm from Argentina. As you can note, I am Muslim, but I am a social anthropologist devoted to the study of religions, especially Islam in Latin America. And I am an activist in the field of religious pluralism and human rights. Well, why I had to make a short presentation of my background? because I feel very, very, very excited to this meeting. Especially, I want to thank Saiyyidah for your presentation. I feel a lot of connections between our thoughts, our beliefs, and I took a lot of things. I don't know if you can see my paper, a lot of things that explode in my mind through your presentation. The first of all that I have to say is they are very impressive about the statistics that you showed about this matter or this topic of Islamophobia in the UK. And you introduce us and this experience of share, celebrate the encounter with other people, trying to show how is our way of life. Here in that part of the world, sorry about my accent because I'm too confused because I have some problems to express myself in English and even in Spanish. So, well, I want to show what happened in this part of the world because here in Argentina, we are in the south of the south. Yeah. I will show you some presentation that I have prepared. I prefer to call the phantom of Islamophobia and its overlapping masks. Why the phantom, the ghost, the spectre of Islamophobia? I choose this allegory because in my case, I feel its presence almost permanently. The phantom with a bag full of masks, some of them very difficult to contemplate and others more friendly, but not less painful. Here in Latin America, we have a different composition from the Muslim landscape that you can find in Europe. First, we have to say that we have the historical migrants from the 18th and 20th century. Now, from 10 years ago, maybe 15, recent migrants. And then we have a huge group that it's called those who choose Islam. Yeah, that is my case. And I would like to introduce you two short stories. The masters of the Islam said that if we can reflect something in a short story, it will be better for us to understand what is happening in our social context. The first one is called Islamophobia in the House. I know that some of you know the short story, but I feel that I have to present again. I was born into a working-class Italian Catholic family. From kindergarten to PhD in the public education system. I am the first university graduate of my family. At the age of 20 years, I discovered Islam during anthropological research. I fell in love with this path and adopted. My grandmother, Maria, cried during weeks because of my change of religion. My parents support me but have doubts. They think I'm crazy. First, anthropologist, Marxist, and now Muslim. One summer morning, my mother, Marta, called me and asked me to stop by a new pet shop 3 blocks from her house to get some food she had bought for her dogs. I went into the store and the saleswoman nervously said, "Here is your stuff." I paid. I went back home and asked Marta, my mom, indeed, "How did the saleswoman know I was your son?" And Marta answered, "Well, I gave her your description because people who don't know you are scared when they see you. That's the first thing that I have to do, to say, sorry, Islamophobia in that house, inside my house. Inside my house with good intentions, yeah? And the second short story is about Islamophobia on the streets. I will ask you permission to use some expressions that I know that are very, very strong, but it's something that happened last September. Last September, Buenos Aires, standing in a traffic light, waiting for the crossing to be open for me. I start to cross the avenue. I make eye contact with the driver of an Alfa Romeo Giulietta that comes across the avenue and turn right. He only had to wait a few seconds for me to pass. He lowers the window, sticks his head out and shouts me, "Cross the street, piece of shit, you fucking Muslim." I stand. Electricity ran down my back and my spine from the coccyx till the head exploded. I didn't know whether to cry, scream, shake it. I can't describe what I felt. Such was the stress, the frustration, the anger, the pride, the importance that I ran him off and I couldn't read the license plate. I'm Muslim, proudly so, for many years. Now I have adopted certain diacritical marks to forge my identity as Muslim. Basically external issues, long beard, head covering, not religious obligations, but decisions that make me much more than just me when I walk down the street, but also my people. This is the coincidence between Saiyyidah says. If you see a Muslim with these marks, you are not you, you are you and your people. Those of us who have placed our trust in words of Allah, the example of his messengers, and follow the guidance of the beloved Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Coming back to the episode, I must confess to you that Allah preserved me and the nameless cowardly face. I'm tired of hearing different circles that Argentina is an example of country in terms of coexistence, tolerance, pluralism. There is no racism and blah, 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 blah. In my case, what has happened to me makes me think about how much work remains to be done in issues of diversity and dissidence. Maybe many of you deep inside will seem like a small thing, but let's think about how many times we have been the fucking Muslims, the fucking Jews, the fucking Latinos, the fucking blacks, the fucking natives, the fucking old people, the fucking foreigners, and also how many times we have been the nameless, cowardly face for another people. Here I want to share you a quotation of Rumi, one of the wise masters of Islam, that say, "Listen with ears of tolerance, see with the eyes of compassion, and speak with the language of love." Thank you very much.
That really hit the spot, Fernando and Saiyyidah. That you carry the weight of your people, carry the weight of the religion as well as the race, and the need for tolerance, for love, and patience. Thank you for sharing your stories, not just stories, but part of pieces of your lives.